Hey everyone, welcome to Steadfast Care Planning, where we plan for care to live well. I'm your guide, Kelly Augspurger. With me today is Deb Martin, manager of the Vulnerable Adult Office at Thrivent. I partner with Thrivent Financial Advisors as a long-term care insurance specialist, helping their clients plan for extended care. And that's how I met Deb. Deb, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Kelly. It's great to be here.
Today, we're going to be talking about elder abuse prevention and detection. And Deb has a lot of experience in this realm. So Deb, can we jump right in?
Absolutely, Kelly.
Okay, Deb, explain to us what exactly is elder abuse? What are we talking about here?
Well, elder abuse is really an intentional act or a failure to act that causes or creates the risk of harm for an older adult. Typically, an older adult is considered 60 years or older. Now, every state has their own threshold level of what an older adult is, but 60 and older is typically the rule of thumb that we use here at Thrivent. And abuse typically occurs at the hands of a loved one or a caregiver, really someone that the elder person trusts. It could be a family member, it could be a friend, it could be a neighbor or a caregiver. The Elder Justice Act defines elder abuse as knowing infliction of physical or psychological harm, or the knowing deprivation of goods or services that are necessary to meet the essential needs or to avoid physical or psychological harm. Abuse can really happen to anyone. I always say that abuse does not discriminate because it doesn't matter what the person's age, sex, religion, or ethnic background is. According to the National Institute on Aging, each year hundreds of thousands of adults over the age of 60 are abused, neglected, or financially exploited. In fact, they estimate that 1 in 10 adults over age 60 are abused, neglected, or exploited. Abuse can happen anywhere. It can happen in the person's home. It can happen in a family member's home. It can happen in an assisted living facility or a nursing home. Really, anywhere is game.
So I think oftentimes when people hear the word abuse, physical abuse is probably at the top of the list of most people's minds. That's kind of what they think of. But you just described typical types of elder abuse. There can be lots of different types of abuse. It's not just physical. I mean, you even mentioned financial, right?
Absolutely.
What would that look like, Deb, for financial abuse?
Financial abuse can happen in many ways. Usually that means someone is taking a person's money or even their belongings. They're misusing them. And by that, I mean they're using them for their own personal gain, their own personal use versus for the benefit of that older adult. It can be stolen money. It can be impostoring, where you pretend that you're the older client and trying to access their accounts and taking funds. It can come in many shapes and forms.
Okay. And who typically are the perpetrators of this abuse? Is it usually, professionals, family, combination? What do you typically see?
I'd say it can be any or all of the above. I mean, the most common abuse happens at the hands of family members. Many times in my work, I see this abuse coming at the hands of adult children or people who are put in a position of trust. And by that, I mean that it's probably an adult child who's been named as a power of attorney or some other individual that the client trusts that's named as a power of attorney that has access to the accounts and decides to dip into them for their own personal uses.
So the people that you probably trust the most, they could be a potential perpetrator, which is really alarming, to think that people are going to possibly take advantage of the people in their life, their family members or close relatives or close friends, something like that. So, Deb, tell us about red flags for elder abuse. What should we look out for?
Well, there are many different red flags, Kelly, that, can point to possible elder abuse. And I always say possible because one red flag doesn't necessarily mean there is abuse, but it's good to be aware of these red flags. And I probably should say that a red flag is really something that you observe or see that makes it look like you're questioning what is really going on. So the red signs of abuse, you can notice them when you're possibly visiting at an older adult's home or at their residential facility. They may be the victim of abuse if, for example, they become more withdrawn or agitated or violent. And the key here is that type of behavior is really out of character of who they normally are. So, that can also be a sign that there's a medical underlying issue. So you have to just look at the signs and think about what else is going on around that adult. They may display signs of trauma, such as rocking back and forth. Maybe they have unexplained pressure marks, bruises, burns, skin tears. Now, as we get older, some of these things happen naturally, but it could be the sign of possible abuse or neglect. Sometimes there's preventable conditions such as bed sores. That's when a person is lying in one position for too long, or maybe is being confined to a bed, perhaps even against their will. There may be unsafe or hazardous living conditions. There could be a change in appearance or hygiene. Perhaps the person was always, well put together and looking sharp, but now they're looking a little, let's say, messier than normal. Maybe their hair is unwashed, they have dirty clothes, maybe poor dental hygiene. That can be a sign of possible diminished capacity or possibly even abuse. You may notice that they're lacking in some personal care items. Perhaps they normally wear glasses and now all of a sudden they're never wearing their glasses. They seem to be missing, or they need assistance with mobility and their walker or cane are missing. These are possible signs of abuse. Other signs of abuse might include unexpected or sudden financial losses, or maybe unpaid bills when they were really timely in the past on always paying their bills. And this is particularly concerning if you know that they usually have adequate resources available to pay their bills. If new family or friends suddenly start appearing in their lives or showing interest in that older adult and spending more and more time with them, that could be a red sign or a red flag. Excitement about a new windfall. Especially, one of the things I see is clients who are calling in and they're very excited about a lottery win. And the first question I always have for them is, did you buy a lottery ticket? Mm-hmm. It sounds simple and basic, but people get caught up in that excitement of possibly winning. And that is definitely a strong red flag of financial possible exploitation or scam involvement. Mm. And, one of the other things that we see in the financial side is when clients are asking for funds from their accounts and they tell you what it's for, or maybe they're not able to share what that's for, or their explanation just doesn't make sense based on what you know about that adult situation. Or another thing is if you explain to them that there are penalties for taking these funds or fees or taxes that they might incur, and they're really not even concerned at all. Those are possible red flags.
The Steadfast Care Planning podcast is sponsored by Amada Senior Care. Amada provides complimentary consultation with a senior care advisor to find the right care from in-home caregiving to community care, as well as long-term care insurance claim advocacy and unique support partnerships for financial advisors to address family transitions and generational retention. To learn more, visit www.steadfastwithamada.com. Do you see these romance scams very often where someone's calling, a perpetrator's calling? It could be a complete stranger, not somebody probably close to them, but that has called your client and said, so-and-so's in trouble, they need $10,000. Maybe this is a family member of the client, your grandson's in trouble and they need $10,000 to get out of jail, or, they're in a bind and they need some help. You need to wire money over. I have an older adult in my life who recently something similar happened to her and she was totally convinced and she was about to go to the bank. And I told her, no, don't go to the bank. This is a scam. This is what these people do. Like, this is not right. So do you hear some of these types of stories?
Sadly, yes. And more often than you would imagine. We tend to refer to those as confidence scams because they can take many shapes and forms. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the romance scams. That's definitely one. These scammers play on the loneliness and isolation of our older population in particular. They know that the older population tends to have more assets than the younger population. But I will say for scams, I know we're talking about older adults, but it can happen to anyone at any age. The romance scams are really big right now, and they build on you slowly. They start building that emotional connection, and gradually they'll introduce themselves and their family perhaps, and they'll say, oh, my aunt is now sick and we really can't afford the hospital bills. Can you just send a little bit to help? And that little bit gradually becomes more and more to where these assets are just totally evaporating.
Deb, I almost got scammed myself like a year and a half ago on my computer. Something popped up and it was like a Windows alert, like you've got an issue, something that needs to be resolved. I'm like, what's going on? And I was like in the middle of work and just completely caught off guard. And I was like, I need to get this fixed, right? Like, I need my computer. And so I'm like calling this number and they're like, yeah, this is what needs to happen. And I just got caught up in the moment. And then I came to like, whoa, what's going on? Like, this is not legit, but they were trying to access my bank account and like all the stuff, right? It's very deceptive. It's very
The
deceptive.
technology scams are huge. I mean, what I usually tell our clients is, if you receive an email or a pop-up when you're on your computer, or you get a text, and any of those things have links or phone numbers to call, don't call them. If you think you truly have a virus on your computer, don't react to the message that pops up. Get out of that window. Contact your local technology team, your geek squad, whatever it is, and have them do a scan on your computer to make sure that you don't have any viruses. Because my mother-in-law fell for one of those as well. And my husband just about went through the roof when he heard about it, because he knows what I do for a living. So, but and what I had to tell him is, don't make her feel bad about this. I mean, this happens to everyone. It can happen to anyone. It happens to people of all economic backgrounds. It happens to all education backgrounds. They don't discriminate. They truly don't. They just go for the money.
That's right. And it just so happens that a lot of older adults have probably more time on their hands and more money, and maybe more susceptible to falling to these types of things, and probably more trusting too, and not knowing all the technology that's involved and that is possible. And so it sounds legitimate. So Deb, can you describe some of the different scams that are actually out there that we should be aware of?
Oh, yeah, Kelly, there are so many. I think, it's important to think about how people would want to get at your information and your money. So for example, if the IRS calls you and threatens you, just hang up, because the IRS doesn't call you if you owe back taxes. They will send you a letter through the U.S. Postal Service. If someone calls and texts or emails you and says that you won a lottery or a publisher's clearinghouse, but you still need to pay some administrative fees or taxes to receive the money, bottom line is it's a scam, especially if you've never bought that ticket or entered the lottery. You don't have to prepay those taxes. If they tell you you do, or you have to, especially if they even tell you you have to pay them with gift cards, another huge red flag to tell you this is probably not legitimate.
Okay.
We talked about the computer repair issues or virus issues before, but one of the ones that I'm seeing a lot lately is clients believing that a friend's sending them a message on Facebook or via email and tells you about a great investment that they found out about, and they've received a great return already and they don't want you to miss out on it. Typically that happens when someone has hacked your friend's Facebook account or accessed their computer and gotten your contact information. And it's really not your friend on the other end of that. I would recommend pick up the phone or go visit your friend in person and ask, did you truly send me this message? Often these scammers are creating fake profiles and promising great rewards or requesting loans, pretending that they're your friend. I think some other things to just kind of give yourself a little safety check on is if anyone asks you to wire transfer money or pay with a gift card or pay with a payment app such as Zelle or
Venmo.
Thank you. I was just drawing a total blank there. Or even cryptocurrency. Consider it a warning sign. Any government agency or anyone else that you perhaps owe money to is not going to take payment in that form. So those are warning signs. And if they start coaching you and telling you not to tell anyone, this is secret, we don't want to let this out, we can't let them know about your winnings. If they start coaching you that it's secret, that should be a warning sign. And the first thing you should do is reach out to a family member or a loved one and talk to them about it. Ask them if they feel that this is legitimate before you do anything else, before you share any information. Bottom line is don't share information. Don't share information with anyone. And if you love to play these games on Facebook where they ask, what's your favorite color? What's your first dog's name? Don't play those games, because those are a scammer's way of getting access to what might be some of your security questions on any of your accounts.
Good tip. Oh, great tip. Yeah, I could absolutely see that happening. Okay, well, thanks for those examples, Deb. Really helpful.
You're welcome.
The Steadfast Care Planning podcast is sponsored by the Certification for Long-Term Care, CLTC, an in-depth training program that gives financial advisors the education and tools they need to discuss extended care planning with their clients. Look for the CLTC designation when choosing an advisor. If you're looking to become a CLTC, enroll in their masterclass and enter Kelly in the coupon code field for $200 off. Deb, if a family member or financial professional suspects elder abuse, how and to whom can it be reported to?
Absolutely. If you believe that an older adult might be in imminent danger, let's first start with that.
Okay.
call 911 immediately. Just don't even hesitate. Don't give it a second thought. Call 911 if you think it's imminent danger. If you know someone that you think is being abused, and abused, I'm going to just kind of clarify again, is physically, emotionally, financially. If you are able to talk to that individual without someone else around, see if you can get them to open up with you. Tell them that, you're concerned and that something's wrong. You're really worried about them. Many times older adults are too ashamed to report mistreatment, or they're afraid that if they report it, it'll get back to the person that is abusing them and make the situation even worse. Therefore, if family and friends step in and address the problem, that's usually the best if they're willing and able to do that. Most states require that doctors and lawyers report suspected abuse, and several states require that financial professionals report concerns about abuse as well. So if you suspect abuse, contact your local adult protective services agency where the person lives. Typically, those agencies are managed at the county level. So look in your local county and determine where your adult protective services agency is. And if you're really unsure on how to contact that agency, you can contact the National Adult Protective Services Association via their website or by calling their national number, which is 202-370-6292. One other thing is, not every older adult is in their own home. Sometimes they're in an assisted living or other type of care facility. If that happens, you may be asked to contact your local long-term care ombudsman. The ombudsman they advocate for the needs of the people who live in assisted living facilities and nursing homes. And you can locate those ombudsmen online or by calling 202-332-2275.
Okay. What are some strategies, Deb, that we can do to prevent elder abuse? We know the red flags now. So how do we best prevent elder abuse?
Absolutely. I guess the first thing I would say is listen. Listen to the older adults and understand what's going on in their lives. Perhaps talk to their caregivers and understand what challenges those caregivers are facing, and see if there's a way to provide them some support or respite opportunities. Ask questions if something doesn't seem right. Then report any abuse or even suspected abuse to local adult protective services agencies or long-term care ombudsmen or even the police. Use the National Adult Protective Services Association website or the phone number that I shared earlier and find your state's reporting numbers. Or another resource is to check the National Center on Elder Abuse listings for government agencies, state laws, and other resources that could help you. I guess really what I'm getting at is educate yourself and others about how to recognize and report elder abuse. And this includes recognizing and avoiding those scams we talked about earlier, Kelly.
Great advice, Deb. Any final advice on how people can plan for care to live well?
I guess what I would say to my fellow older Americans or listeners that might be older is really take the time now to plan for your future needs, both your healthcare needs and your financial needs. Make sure that people know what your wishes are, that they know what your preferences are, what your values are, and then make sure that those are documented. Get proper tools in place, such as advanced directives, powers of attorney, and supported decision-making agreements. For family, I would say encourage older adults to contact their local financial advisor, banking institution, or other financial institutions to learn how you can designate a trusted contact person for their accounts. That's really a push that the industry is making to help make sure that these institutions have someone that the client has said they trust, that they can reach out to in certain limited situations. In other words, I think of a trusted contact person as kind of an emergency contact. So in the case that the financial institution has concerns about the older adult or has observed some suspicious transactions, but they can't reach the older adult, or maybe that older adult is really believing and they're tied up in a scam like we talked about earlier, that trusted contact is a resource then that the client has previously designated and the financial advisor or institution can reach out to talk to them about what is going on in that client's life. Now, it's important to know that naming a trusted contact doesn't give that person the right to access your accounts or to get any information about your accounts. It's really, like I said earlier, an emergency contact.
Okay. Really having written documents, proactive planning, talking to people in your life and letting them know also where these documents are. It's great to have these documents,
Good point.
but people need to know where the documents are and, who your estate planner is, who your financial advisor is, so that when the time comes and those people are needed, your people, your family, whoever, you've listed as a trusted contact, know how to get a hold of these people. So yeah, proactive planning, we're big on that in our industry, and planning ahead and making sure that you as an individual are well protected, but also your family too, because this is really a ripple effect, not just the person that needs care, but then the other people around them. So how do we best protect everybody involved? Well, we got to have a plan. We got to talk about it in advance, and we need to have these things written down.
Absolutely.
So thank you. Thank you, Deb. Really appreciate your time today. Thank you for your time and your expertise. Thanks for hanging out with me. Have a great day.
Thank you, Kelly.